Yo, Corey, what's up, man? Good to see you. What's up, Dustin? I know Dustin will always be on time. I
How's it
just feel
going?
that it's a part of his personality, man. I love it. What's up, man? Good to see you. What's up, Tommy? What's up, Thomas? What's up, Matt? Great to see you guys. Thanks for jumping on early. It's awesome. Corey, what's up, dude? Great to see you.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Excited for today, that's for sure. And a lot went into it, I'll tell you in a second. But if you look up on the news, like Maui's like fully on fire and like has a
What?
hurricane. Yeah. So I wasn't, and they're so far behind that it was like, I'm trying to text the team at like 5 a.m. over there. So looks like we're good to go though. So we should be all squared away. What's up, Matt? Great to see you, man.
I don't know.
What's up, Ben? Dang, man. We should plan like a special mastermind time from 11:55 or 5 minutes before the call, depending on where you're at, till 12 for all the guys that are like jumping on 5 minutes early. I love this.
Let's do it, man.
I'm at the edge of my seat right now. So
I love it, man. Well, I'm hoping that it looks like Kevin Hamilton's in Maui, but he's in San Diego. So let's just pray that the internet and the storm and all that stuff. You guys will see it probably after you jump off. But there's like a hurricane plus fires because of a fire started, but then the hurricane winds spread it across Maui. I hope that's not where David McMenemy is. Do you guys know of which island he was on? He actually shared it in the group, but I forget where.
I was just in
What's up?
Maui like earlier this year. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, man. What's up, Chris? Good to see you. What's up, Dwayne? Jeff? Cody Cottle? Cody's your shirt green? Give me a thumbs up if that thing's green. I think I have the same exact shirt. No? Dang.
It's like kind of this bluish. It's a built shirt. It's an old one. It's one of my older builds.
Cool. I actually like the older material a little bit better than the new stuff they expanded with. But grateful to be with you guys. All right, we got I'll give them a couple minutes to jump on. Again, there's like literally fire and hurricane in Maui, but I think we should be good. Yeah, we are good. I had a few announcements for you guys that I want to invest the smallest amount of time going over, though I believe they're really important and some of them are really exciting. I love it. I could see Mr. Brandon Turner on. Looks like, oh, I thought you had no shirt on, bro. I was like, yes, this is like totally Hawaii style because your shirt is the same color as your skin. I'm going to do some announcements real quick for you guys. And I just want to pray for you guys first. And the reason I want to pray is because we've been seeing breakthrough in this area. And I want you guys to see breakthrough in it as well. So Jesus, we just thank you for this call, this time together. We set it apart inside of our mind that we say we're here to honor you with our time as a brotherhood in one accord, just as you breathed on Acts Church, where the men came together in one accord in a spirit of harmony. I pray that you'd bless this community as a whole. They would walk together like a family with the hands, the feet, the eyes, the ears, etc. And I say that everything that these man's hands touch, that it would turn to gold. I just declare right now that your sacrifice was worthy for every single man here to walk in breakthrough, that they don't have to do anything extra to walk in breakthrough, but to honor your sacrifice. And we just call that every seed that these men have sown in each area of their life, that it would just start reaping a harvest, and not like the worldly harvest, but we declare that just as the Bible says, that they would reap a harvest in every single season, that their leaves would not wither, but they would continue to grow. In Jesus' name, we give you this time. We give you all the glory. Amen.
Amen.
A few things real quick. October's coming up really quick. Amanda threw in there again. If you guys haven't, a ton of you guys booked your rooms for Lakeway. The discount, she said, is ending soon. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that, and that you guys get your discounted room link, whether you're staying with, in a suite with other people or whatever. Just make sure to get that scheduled. Anything on your side? Cool. So that's number one. Number two, did you guys see this? There's a small photo, but I literally fly out to Phoenix, Arizona on Sunday before my next announcement, but on Sunday to go look at and tour the next event location, which is going to be at the very end. I think it's January 31st to February 2nd. We actually posted it. This place is insane in Phoenix, kind of tucked into the mountains. It's absurd. And during that time of year, January to February, it's going to be the best thing ever. Similar to even when you come here in Austin, the average temperature high is 83. So, and then just as our last event, so everything's kind of coordinated where we move around the world based on that. Absolutely going to be phenomenal. Also, I wanted to share with you guys one thing because I've kind of been holding it back. This is for our event here in Austin. I can't tell you everyone or everything that's going on. I haven't even told people like where are we going the first night? Like where's our connection night? Who's teaching and training? What activities are we going to do? But one thing that I can tell you guys now that I wanted to be able to tell other people, and I want to tell you guys first before anyone else, is that one of our teachers and trainers that's going to come in and really pour into you guys. And when I mean pour into you guys, like we've invested to have this person come in to really give you everything that they have. And if you guys go on Instagram, which is probably the best way to do it, you can look up NFL Super Bowl champion, Mr. Steve Weatherford, that will be coming out, investing time with you guys, pouring into you guys, serving you guys as one of the speakers that's coming out to this event. Now, I can't tell you all the speakers, but I'll give you one just as like a little taste and see appetizer. This is where you go to the chef and the chef brings you out a taster before you ever order anything on the menu. Don't tell him I said he's a taster because he's like 240 pounds of pure rock solid albino gorilla muscle. Like he is absolutely insane. And he was the fittest man in football. So I won't say that he's a little taster, but he's freaking phenomenal. Also, I wanted to tell you guys that some of you guys know I take a family trip every year to Lake Powell. And I have no cell service and no internet. I've done it since 2019. I leave on Sunday night, Monday morning for that. So I'll be literally completely shut down with all I have is maybe an SOS. So if you never hear from me again, then I'm gone at Lake Powell. But I've made it out every single year. So I'll have no cell service, no internet, but the team's still here to serve you guys. Any questions, help, logins, whatever. And then obviously the community's in good hands for next week's Power Hour. If I could be there anyway, I totally would. But expecting you guys to hold down the fort and absolutely crush it. We have Nick leading worship next week. We have mastermind sessions inside of elite teams. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. So you guys excited about that? And if you need anything from me prior, just make sure to do it before this week ends. And I say that with a grain of salt, knowing that maybe 20 people will be like, yo, I need this on Sunday. So I'll do my best to get back to everyone before I lose the internet. 3 scriptures I want to share with you guys before I hand it over to our expert. I posted these ones inside the Voxer group. Let your light shine before men in such a way that you may see that they may see your good deeds and moral excellence and recognize and honor and glorify your Father who is in heaven. This is why we're building the business. Like, yes, God's called us to multiply, but he's called you to let your light shine before men in such a way that they will see your good works. Why? So they can glorify him. They can see the good works that are coming through your guys' hands. I want to see that happen inside the business. I want you guys to influence people out there. Second one was, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Keep holding true to the vision that you guys have. They're just so big for me. The last one is just that inside of this week, if we can do this as a brotherhood to stay in one accord, Moses raised up a snake in the desert while they were being bit by snakes. And God told them to raise up a snake that was a representation of Jesus. And if they just kept their eyes focused on Jesus, not the problems, that they would all be healed. And if they focused on all the individual problems, and every single person out there right now is focusing on every individual problem. Oh, I got this trauma. I got this trauma. I got this hurt. I got this limiting belief. And they're focused on every single little problem. And one of the things that I just felt in my prayer time before here is that for myself, taking from scripture, is that he raised up that snake, which was a representation of Jesus, that if you focus on him, all those things will be added unto you. So if you want to not deal with each problems individually and just walk in complete freedom, I really feel that that's a focus, a frame that we can all have this week, that no matter what the little problems are, let's focus on Jesus first. Even in my prayer time, oftentimes I'll focus on my problems as I'm praying. So I'm literally praying to Jesus, but I'm thinking about every little problem that I have. I'm like, I don't think that's the way it's supposed to go. So with that, those are the 3 scriptures I wanted to share with you guys. And last thing is that we have invited a bunch of new guys into the group. So make sure to welcome them. If you see a new face like Dustin and Matt and John Michael Clark and Errol and Ricky, who just joined like yesterday. So phenomenal people that I've had the pleasure of talking to personally and actually approved myself and through multiple people to have them in here. Absolutely phenomenal guys. You're going to want to connect with them. And obviously that limits a lot of the space that we have for the upcoming mastermind. I know a ton of you guys wrote down like 30 people that should be coming to the event. one of the things I would love for you guys is if we can actually have those conversations, get them introed in a way where we can talk to them, especially if it's before we leave. And that way I don't kind of leave them hanging. That would just mean the world to me if you guys have people that you know should be there before we just fill it up with the people that are coming to us asking to go. I'd rather give your guys' people the first shot and the first spot. Is that cool? Sick. So I want to turn it over to our expert today that literally escaped. I thought meaning right now, literally, I think his whole island is on fire and there's a hurricane. It doesn't look like it, but this is what we're seeing on the news. I don't know if it's fake news, but all I know is that at 5 a.m. this morning for him, I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? But this guy, as we had said, has accrued a massive net worth. I got to meet him at a mastermind event, much like the ones that we hold and that I'm invested in, sat down at lunch with him and just automatically knew he was a genius. But it was tough to see behind the beard because the beard is pretty big. So I wasn't sure. And just to see him over the time, seeing what he's accomplished as something that is just a statement of who he is, right? People even got mad. He's so accomplished that when I talked about him, people are getting mad at me. They're like, oh, well, net worth doesn't matter. What your worth in God is what matters. I'm like, wow, he must be very accomplished if people are doing that. These accomplishments are strictly just things like 100 million plus downloads, #1 real estate podcast that he hosted, hundreds of millions of dollars of properties and through what he's done, just super impressive and at a young age. And those accolades, I believe, are just a representation of his character. And I'm grateful to have him here as also a brother in Christ. Welcome, Mr. Brandon Turner.
Dude, what an introduction. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. This group looks legit. Yeah, I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Yeah, you're a rock star too. Thank you.
Are you okay actually over there?
Dude, yeah. All right. So let me give an update. Can you guys hear me okay? This is gonna sound super weird. The waves are crashing so loudly next to me that it's like, if it gets hard to hear, let me know. That sounds like such a first world problem. Yeah, last night was nuts at some fires. So there's a hurricane nearby. It's not over the island, it's nearby, but it's pushing winds. So we had 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. And then that wind led to some brush fires starting, which then just spread. And I don't know how many of you guys have been to Lahaina, which is a town, this beautiful old whaling town. It's like the most tourist spot in Maui. Apparently it's gone. This morning, it's the whole thing burned down, which is devastating. We're kind of in that both literal and metaphorically fog of war right now, where nobody really knows what's going on. There's no internet over on that side of the island, no power. At midnight, our alarms went off. Every single phone went off and said, evacuate, the fires are coming. So we evacuated at 12:30 and, quickly sped out of our house. And I had a friend who lives right next to the beach. And so we went and crashed with him. So we had a little slumber party last night with about 20 of us crashing at his house, and we're okay. We don't know what's going on. So just keep the people who just lost their homes, which are a lot of people in your guys' prayers as we kind of figure out what's going on. But anyway, on a more uplifting note, Maui's beautiful as always, and real estate investing is awesome. I've been doing that for a long time, and I'm here to kind of share a bunch of stuff. So Nicholas, is there a specific, I want to know, is there a specific need, and maybe people can throw it in the chat area, we'll do some Q&A, that I can most help with? If not, I got the typical here's how to do real estate investing and how I've done it and kind of case it in my story. But if you've got any other direction, I'm happy to go there as well.
Yeah, I know. Let's open up. And real quick, if you can mute your phone for 1 second, because I'm getting some feedback. Cool. I would love for you to kind of break down for the guys your story, for the guys that don't know it. I just think there's something inside of story. God uses stories over and over again. And then I would love to leave that last 20 minutes minimum for Q&A for the guys that I know there's guys that wanted to make sure they got specific questions asked. So maybe some context, and you've obviously done a lot of stuff online as well as offline, which I think is very, very cool. And that'll probably stir up some more specific questions. Maybe and I say that because you might answer some of them along the way. So we don't ask questions that you're going to answer anyway. So go ahead, man.
All right, cool. Yeah, if you guys have any trouble hearing me at any point, let me know. Yeah, normally I'd be in my nice fancy studio and with a good mic and all that, but man, what a crazy night. All right, so let me tell you guys my story real quick. So I grew up in the Midwest. My dad's a meat cutter. My mom did daycare in our house, so born very blue collar. during college, I ended up renting out. I rented a apartment and then rented out all the bedrooms, like all the bedrooms. So I slept on the couch, and realized that was actually kind of cool. Which is because I didn't have to pay any rent. I could just live for free on the couch and not pay anything. And that was such a foreshadowing of what would then become the rest of my life of investing in real estate. But early on, it was 2007. I was 21 years old, just graduated college, was looking to go to law school. And I was talking to a woman who was a real estate agent. And I said, hey, can you find me a house to rent? And she said, why would you rent? You can just buy one. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't, I'm 21. I don't have any credit. I don't have any cash. I make, $12 an hour. No, it was like $9.55 an hour. And she said, don't worry, you can get a loan. And so I called up the mortgage company, and sure enough, this was 2007. They just give anybody a loan who had a pulse. So I bought this cheap, crappy house, fixed it up over the course of about 6 months. I didn't know how to do any of that. I just bought a book from Home Depot called 123 Home Improvement, and or Home Improvement 123. It's like the big orange book from Home Depot everyone has. And I just learned how to do things. And I sold that house and made 20 grand. And I was like, well, shoot, I just made $20,000 in like, 6 to, 7, 8 months. That's more than most lawyers make their first year. And so I was like, all right, well, forget law school. I'm going to jump into real estate. And I remember telling my parents, actually, I called my dad and I was like, hey, I'm not going to go to law school anymore. I'm going to be a real estate investor. And he was like, that's a terrible idea. Terrible idea. You're going to lose everything. Your tenants aren't going to pay rent. You don't have any money. And I was like, shoot, you're right. Like I'm not going to make it. Like, what am I going to do? And I remember going to Google and typing in what to do when tenants don't pay rent, because I didn't have an answer for them. And I actually found at that point this little tiny website that had just been around for a couple of small years. It was just a forum. It was called Bigger Pockets. And there was an answer. There was this long answer to what to do when a tenant doesn't pay rent. And I remember printing it out and highlighting it and circling things and learning for the first time of like, there are answers to these things. And so, kind of first lesson that I picked up there is, when you get into real estate, especially, but really any business, right? There's always people willing to tell you why it won't work. And the irony is that those people have never done it, right? So like, my dad had great intentions. He wanted his son to be successful, but at the end of the day, like when I learned that other people out there were making money in real estate, it was actually working. I ended up following their advice and I got into it. And I ended up buying some more real estate. Went from that first house, which I sold, and then I bought a duplex. I lived in one unit, rented out the other one. And I remember my tenants coming over. I had this vivid memory. My tenant came over the first day and he hands me $650 in cash. That's a terrible idea. Don't take cash, but gives me $650 in cash. And I remember thinking, like, standing in this, crappy alleyway between these two little houses on one lot. This is a duplex. I remember thinking, wait, my mortgage is only $620 a month. And this thing is bringing me $650. I'm living for free. So again, kind of a throwback to those days of the apartment. This time I'm living in a house for free. Today we call that house hacking. It's a phrase that I put in a blog post years ago and it just took off and became like kind of an industry term. It's where you live in one unit, rent the other ones out. Ironically, I still do that today. In fact, my house in Maui here is a $3.5 million house. And I have 2 extra units on the property. One of them I rent out, and the other one I keep empty for family and friends. But at any moment, I could rent it out and live for free in this stupid ocean view house. So I'm still a huge fan of house hacking. It's been kind of my story all along of that idea. So anyway, so I got that rental, and I realized I'm going to buy more of those. But then I also started flipping houses, and this is now 08, 09, 10. And y'all remember those days. Many of you were pretty young. Some of you were not so young, but those were terrible days to be in real estate because it was incredibly, incredibly hard to get money for anything. First of all, everyone's losing their properties. There's foreclosures left and right. And again, everyone's saying, don't invest in real estate. It's a terrible idea. Look at all these people losing their houses and going into foreclosure. It's so hard to invest in real estate. Don't do it. That was the general theme with most people. But I'm stubborn and I just kept doing it anyway and figuring things out. The flipping didn't work, so I just turned them into rental properties. And all of a sudden I started making little bits of money, $100 here, $100 there a month. And the more I bought, the more money I'd make. And at one point, I got a cool story. At one point, I'd been doing this for maybe 4 years. Had a job for a little while, left the job, got another job, and I'm working at a bank now just to try to pay some bills. Because again, there's not a lot of money yet in the rentals. And I read a book called The ABCs of Real Estate Investing by a guy named Ken McElroy. Anybody read that book? It's fantastic. It's very simple. Like this is how like apartment complex investing works. And I read that on a Saturday and I'm like, my mind is blown. I'm like, whoa, multifamily, like apartment complexes. I want to do that. So I read the sequel, The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy. I read both of them on a Saturday. The next morning I go to church and it's in that awkward, like greet your neighbor time, you know, when you're at church and they're like, greet your neighbor. And there's like the old couple sitting in front of me who I'd seen for years. I'd known them in the church. Like we weren't close, but you know, I'd seen them and we're just chatting for a minute. And they're like, what have you been up to? And I'm like, oh, I just read this amazing book on buying apartment complexes. And I realized that's what I want to do with my life. And this couple looks at each other and then they look at me and they say, well, that's interesting because we actually have an apartment complex we want to sell. And I was like, oh, so we ended up talking and 9 months later, we bought their apartment complex. It was 24 units. And they carried the contract, which means that it's like, you know, selling it to us and we make the payment to them instead of making the payment to the bank. So I didn't have to go to a bank, didn't have to worry about that. And got this apartment complex, which gave me financial freedom. Like that was like level 1 financial freedom, which is now I'm making $3,000 to $4,000 a month. I can pay my bills. I mean, I'm not buying a jet, I'm not, you know, doing anything crazy, but that's and passive income is a loose term, right? I'm still working the properties. I'm still managing them. I'm still fixing toilets sometimes. I'm still involved, but I didn't have to have a job anymore. Ironically, and this is the part that I don't usually get to tell because I'm not usually talking to Christian groups. The pastor of the church, nice old guy, the worship leader / youth leader, nice lady, end up leaving their spouses, cheating on their spouses, hooking up together and leaving the church. So overnight, the church lost their pastor, their youth pastor, and their worship leader all in one day. It was like a week after I quit my job and was financially free. And what's fascinating about that story when I look at that is it was like God being like, hey, I don't need people. Like I can move people in and out. So like, I'm a big believer that God allowed or made, I don't know how you look at that apartment complex happen so that then I was able to step in and become the full-time, volunteer. Didn't make a dime because the church had no money at that point. And nobody wants to give money to a church where the pastor and the youth leader and the worship leader leave. But I was able to step in and be the worship leader for the next decade. I was there for 10 years doing worship and the youth ministry. So I was a full youth leader, full worship pastor for a decade until I moved out here to Hawaii. So that was just kind of it's an interesting story that God can use who he wants and he can move people around. And if people want to be morons and go and live in sin and destroy their lives, like God's like, all right, well, the church is not built on the pastor. It's built on Jesus and he can do what he wants. So that was an interesting, decade, being a youth leader to mostly middle school kids. At one point we had maybe 25, 30 kids in that youth group. Never made a dime from it. It was always volunteer, but it was deep, meaningful work. I would highly recommend if you guys aren't involved in a youth ministry of some kind, whether it's just volunteer, helping with the middle schoolers, like, man, there's such depth there to both your faith growing and helping them with theirs. It's just, it's a very difficult, but a very powerful phase of life. So I highly recommend it. So during that period, I mentioned Bigger Pockets earlier. I continue to buy rental properties here and there. I was maybe up to 35, 40 units total, and kind of financially free. And I decided to read The 4-Hour Workweek, which many of you have read The 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss. And I was blown away at the idea that you can make money on the internet. And so I started this. First of all, I started like a couple little tiny little ideas that never really worked out, just playing with, how does the internet work? What can I do? And then I started a blog called realestateinyour20s.com. It's actually still there, like all spelled out, realestateinyour20s.com. I haven't updated it in 15 years, something like that, maybe 13 years, but Real Estate in Your 20s. And I just started posting articles just about what I was doing and little explanations, like what is cash on cash return? And I started to get a few people reading the thing. And as many of you know, maybe you don't, the way to grow a blog back in the day and still today is to go on other people's blogs and guest post. So you write an article for someone else. So I go to Bigger Pockets, who the site that I've been a member there. Like, it's just like, it was a forum. I've been engaged. You can even go and look at my early stuff where I'm like, hey, I'm trying to buy this apartment complex from a couple from my church. Like, like I had been engaging there anyway and involved. And I went there and I asked the owner, it was this one guy named Josh, if I could post articles on his blog, and he agreed. And so I started posting there, and we became, Facebook friends, me and Josh, the owner. And then one day he said, hey, on his Facebook, he said, hey, I'm looking for help right now, editing blog posts. And I was like, I can edit blog posts. That was a complete lie. I'm sorry. God, whoops. I'm terrible at English. I still am terrible at English. You can't do it. I've written a bunch of books, but I just wanted to be involved. I wanted to help. I'm like, I can do it. I'm great. I can totally edit. And so I jumped in and I started editing these blog posts for him, and the site, started to move up, not because of me. Again, this is the point I want to make, is I was terrible at that job. The next job I had at Bigger Pockets, pretty much every job I've had at Bigger Pockets over the years, any role I've ever took there, I was not good at. So why did it start to explode? Two reasons. Number one, many of you are familiar with the concept of the integrator and the or like what do we call that? The rocket fuel, right? There's like what's the word I'm looking for? The integrator and the visionary. That's the word, the two concepts. So Josh was the visionary. He had huge visions for where Bigger Pockets could go, but he was also a do-it-yourselfer. He was doing everything himself until he hired someone to just help. And so it wasn't me that changed the direction of the site. It was having me that changed the direction of the site. Does that make sense? So Josh could have hired anybody and it would have probably done something similar. But the second thing that we did is we started the podcast, the Bigger Pockets podcast. And that thing, I remember setting a goal that within the first, I think I said within the first 5 years, we wanted to have a top 100 business podcast. Ended up being, a top 10 the first week, and it never dropped below that. The entire time I was there, it never dropped below number maybe 10 or 11 of all business podcasts. So we ended up with, 100 and some million downloads, 500 some episodes. And yeah, I did that for 9 years. I got some equity in Bigger Pockets at some point, not a lot, but I got a few percent equity. A lot of people think I started the site because I kind of became the face, because I was just obsessed with it. And I was also, Josh didn't invest in real estate and I did. So I got to be the poster child of what Bigger Pockets could do, because I used Bigger Pockets. I was like, yeah, I'm the example. All right, so fast forward a few years. I'm gonna get to the next phase. So during this time, I've kind of explained 2 phases of my career. Phase 1, and they kind of all overlap. I got 4 phases, but they all overlap. Phase 1 was that my wife and I, Heather, she's amazing, was us buying rental properties and flipping houses. Like we were just grinding. I remember staying up till 3 a.m. painting rental units because I had a lease signing at 7 o'clock the next morning. We were in it, just working. Phase 2 was the Bigger Pockets years. I was just started growing Bigger Pockets, and that was a tremendous amount of fun. I wrote some books in there. One of them sold really, really well. For whatever reason, the book on rental property investing has sold well over 1 million copies now. It's consistently been the #1 real estate book on Amazon for going on 6-7 years now. Rarely drops out of that spot. And again, not necessarily because of me, but when you have an email list of hundreds of thousands of people and you have a podcast with that many listens, almost everything you do kind of turns to gold in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I'm just saying, like, when you have this massive email list, you're running very. Here's a metaphor I use often. Imagine you are flying a kite, like you're out there flying a kite. Now, if it's really, really windy and you take your kite and throw it in the air, it might just take off. But what do we normally do on a not so windy day? We run with the kite, because you got to get it some lift first. The kite's got to get some lift, and you're running it with it. But what you still need to do is that kite needs to catch the wind and go off, because at some point you want to stop running. This is what having an audience, having a personality online can do, is it gives you the ability to run very fast and for a long period of time, so that the odds of whatever it is you throw in the air catches wind and then takes off. It doesn't guarantee it, but it sure is better than just trying to stand on a beach without moving and toss something in the air. The chance of that catching and hitting product market fit is just rare. But when you have the eyeballs, the chance of it going is just 100x better. So Bigger Pockets, I spent that decade there, started building my personal brand at that point. My Instagram, I kind of tried to brand a little bit. So now I'm Beardy Brandon, think beard with a Y, Beardy Brandon. I started posting lots there, and that just started growing. There was never a point, I never had a viral video until this year. I never had any moment where it was just like hockey stick. It's just been a very slow grind for 6 or 7 years. I post every day, several times, interact with the comments. And then just slowly over time, I think I'm at 340,000 followers now. And just now, yeah, I've had a few videos go viral, and not even for things that are real estate related, so they don't really help me. So there has been no secret sauce to social media success. It's literally just been posting every day for a long time. And plus having a, massive podcast and driving people there from the podcast sure helped a lot as well. So that was phase 2, was bigger pockets. Now towards we'll call it 5 years ago, I'm standing on stage at this conference and I'm teaching like 1,000 people on stage. I'm on stage, there's 1,000 people in the audience, and they're mostly syndicators. A syndicator is somebody who gets a bunch of people together. Like imagine everyone here in this room, we all throw in 100 grand, and then we go out and find a big apartment complex, something like that guy right there, and we take it down. That's a syndication. That's how they do a lot of shopping malls and skyscrapers and all that stuff. So I'm teaching all these syndicators. Now at the time I have 35 rental units, and I'm teaching all these syndicators on stage. And I have this thought: the only reason I'm here is because I can sell tickets to this event, but I don't deserve to be here. Like, I am the smallest person in this room of 1,000 people. I'm the smallest investor here, and I'm on stage trying to teach them something. And I thought of 2 interesting things. One, I realized I was finally in the right room, but I was in the wrong spot. Like I wanted to deserve to be on that stage because I had something to I had the experience to deserve to be there. And so I went home from that trip and I said, I'm going to build a massive company. Oftentimes what I realized is for several years, I was very much resting on the fact that I was the best investor, quote unquote, best investor in my market. Like I was in this small little town. I had more rental units than any other person that I knew. Like there was very few people in this little town that had 35 rental units. I mean, I was crushing it compared to those people. And compared to my family who had no rentals and no net worth, and my friends who just thought I was insane, I was doing really, really well. And so oftentimes when we compare ourselves with our immediate surroundings and those around us, it doesn't push us to grow, right? I didn't really feel the urge to grow. It wasn't until I got into a bigger room with people who were crushing it at a level that I just couldn't imagine that I realized that I had a lot to go. And now I'm not saying even that comparing myself to those people was the answer either. But comparing myself, what I realized is I had the potential. I saw what Grant Cardone was doing at the time. I really took a lot of ideas from him because Grant was using his fame, quote unquote fame, to then raise money to buy apartment complexes. And I was like, that's genius. So really what I'm saying is compare yourself not to your friends and family around you, and not necessarily to those who are crushing it in the online world, but compare it to your potential, right? Like, what does my potential say? And I was like, yeah, I can do bigger and better. So I go home, I read this book called Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold. Anybody read that one? It's really, I love this book. It basically says like, hey, make a very clear picture in like some creative way of what your future company looks like 3 years in the future. So I wrote a newspaper article about my company written 3 years in the future. And it was called The $50 Million Surfers, how a small team of adventure seekers built an empire, helped millions achieve financial independence, and kept their humanity intact. And it was literally, it looks like a newspaper article. It's written in 3 columns. It starts with like December 31st, 2021, because that was 3 years in the future at the time. And I said that we had 1,000 rental units. I said we had $50 million of real estate. At the time, I had $1 million, maybe $2 million, but I said we had 50 million. It was a huge goal. And from that vision, and now we're entering phase 3, right? As I'm building this new commercial real estate business. From that vision, I said, well, what would it take to buy $50 million of real estate? What would the team have to look like? And so I built out an organizational chart, an org chart. And I said, I would need to have a full-time person who does nothing but acquisitions. Like they all go out there and find deals. I would need somebody to analyze them. It's called an underwriter. So I need a full-time underwriter just to run the numbers and figure out how they work. I would need a finance person, somebody to deal with all the money, banks and issuing payments to investors and all that. And I would need an investor relations person to deal with all the investors, because we're going to go and raise money from hundreds of people. And then I made a decision that was maybe the smartest decision. At the time, I didn't know that was, that big of a deal, but it's kind of been the defining moment in my life in kind of this new way of thinking about business. And that's this. I also said, who's going to run this? Because majority of time entrepreneurs go, I'm going to hire a team. If like some of them think I'm going to, start at the bottom, do everything, which I did for a while. I call that the DIYers. Some people do everything, but then they start to outsource little projects to their brother-in-law, to their friend, to their mom, whatever. Those are like the project managers of the entrepreneurship world. And then there's the CEOs of the world. They go and build out a team and then they run that team. But I skipped that phase. I didn't do the CEO phase. I said, who's going to be my CEO, or technically a COO. I said, who's going to run it? So I hired another person. His name is Ryan Murdoch. He actually lived out here. He actually moved out to Hawaii when I did and lives in my backyard because I'm still house hacking. So I actually rent my other unit to Ryan. And I said, Ryan, let's build this. And then I said, actually, why don't you build this? So Ryan went out there. I gave him a bunch of equity in the company. And then he went out and built the team. So in other words, the difference being most people hire from the bottom up in their companies. And I just made this little switch. I hired from the top down. I hired Ryan, who then built out a team. And so it was Ryan's responsibility to grow it. Now I still got to be visionary, but I didn't have to earn my way into visionary role over 5, 10, 15 years, which is what 99% of entrepreneurs do, is they earn their way there eventually. I just started there with Open Door Capital. And since that day, I have rarely put in more than 5 hours a week at Open Door Capital. Now, what we did there is, remember, the goal was $50 million of real estate. And we decided to start with mobile home parks because mobile home parks were interesting to me. They have good cash flow. There's a million reasons why I like them. But honestly, the most important thing why I chose mobile home parks is like why mobile home parks were the best is because I chose them. It's not because of some other thing. They were the best because I chose them. You know, there's a great line in the book Traction that says it's more important that you decide than what you decide. And when I was on that plane ride coming home from that conference, that's what I had realized was that for several years, because I didn't know the perfect thing I should get into, I didn't know what the next right thing was, I didn't take any action at all for many years. And finally, when I read that line, and I realized it doesn't matter. And here's the kind of the truth about real estate. It all works, you guys. It all works. Like people come to me all the time. They're like, I'm thinking about doing RV parks or flipping houses. What do you think I should do? And I'm like, what do you want to do? It literally all works. Now, I'm not saying it all works everywhere. And I'm not saying that every area works for everything. But no matter what strategy you can think of in real estate, there's probably thousands of people currently doing it. There's courses on it, there's education on it, there's books on it, and there are thousands of millionaires who have become that way through that thing. And so it's far more important to pick a thing, go all in and become world-class. Now, the difference today versus 12 years ago is it is very hard to be good at real estate investing today unless you are world-class. Back in 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, you could just buy anything and you make a bunch of money. But partially because of the democratization of information all over the internet, from sites like Bigger Pockets and others, real estate, everybody can do it. Everyone's excited about it. I mean, there's 100 million people, well, probably less than that, but tens of millions of people have listened to podcasts now on real estate investing. It's very, very sexy right now. And so you have to be world-class. The good news is, it's not that hard to be world-class, right? Like, it's not that hard to be good at anything in this world. Like, the bar is so low in business, in most industries, especially things like real estate. Like, I say this with contractors all the time. If you answer your phone and call people back, you are in the top 5% of contractors, right? Just by answering your phone and calling people back, you are in the top 5%. Real estate's very similar. If you make offers and analyze deals, you're in the top 5%, because all the people that want to get into real estate, whatever, but you do have to put in the work. You have to become world-class. So we got world-class. So at mobile home parks, we said, we're going to dive into that. So 3 years later, our goal, remember, was $50 million of real estate in 3 years. We did not buy $50 million of real estate in 3 years. We bought $300 million of real estate in that time. Now, here we are a year and a half later, and we're up to 900 million, we should be at $1 billion here in the next month or two based on the properties we have under contract. Now, we have added on a couple different asset classes in the time. The first 3 years, all we did was mobile home parks because we wanted to become world-class. Then about 3 years in, we added on apartment complexes. So now we do large, huge apartment complexes. And then we did that for about a year and a half. Now, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I just closed on a self-storage. So now I'm in a new industry because I refuse to go into a new niche until I can say my team is fully world-class at that thing. Now, one interesting point about the apartments, when I got into the apartment complexes, the large ones, we're talking $100 million properties, I decided that we weren't world-class yet. And when I'm raising money, I don't want to invest in something that I don't want to take people's money if I'm not world-class at it. So what we did is we went and found a partner. We found somebody who had already been investing for a decade. They were world-class. And we simply asked them like, hey, and we really liked them. We got to know them well. And we said, how much real estate can you guys do in a given year? And they said, oh, we can buy about $30 million of real estate based on how much money they could raise. So they could maybe raise 10 million a year. They could buy 30 million in real estate. We said, great. Why don't you triple that? Why don't you triple that amount, and then we'll come in and we'll fund the rest, whatever you can do, and we'll just split everything 50-50. You guys win, you get to play in bigger games, bigger deals. It's more fun, more prestigious, and you don't have to raise money anymore. We're good at that. Like, I'm good at that because of the work I've done on social media. And they jumped at it. And so we've actually bought hundreds of millions of dollars now of apartments together. And that takes very, very little work from me because we JV'd. And so that's just another great lesson is like, you know, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, especially, we get, I don't think greedy maybe is the wrong word, but we want all of it. We don't want to partner. We don't want to split things. In fact, when I brought my partner, Brian, into Open Door Capital, Brian is an accomplished author. He's invested in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rental properties. And I brought him in as kind of an advisor / asset manager. He wanted 30% of Open Door Capital. And I remember getting that feeling in my stomach when he said that, like, oh, I can't give away 30% of my company to this guy. Like, I know he's good, but that's a lot of money. Think of how much hundreds of millions of dollars that could be down the road. Like, that's a lot of money. And then they kind of like started to restrict like that and get that kind of, I'll say again, maybe greed's the wrong word, but maybe that's exactly the word. And then I said, wait, if I have Brian Murray, world-class, smartest guy I know in real estate, if I had on my team, can I do 30% more real estate? If I had Brian Murray, of course I could do 30% more real estate. In fact, I think we have already 10 times what we would have had without him. And so I realized very much then partnerships, JVs, they are not costs. They don't cost me money. They're investments. They make me money as long as you have the right one and manage it correctly. So that was phase 3. We were buying a lot of real estate. I work very little at that company. I've got really good people, and there's whole stories there on how I get good people, but I have really good people. And then I'm at this other mastermind, actually the same one, Nicholas, you and I were at, and I'm up on top of this mountain, and I left Bigger Pockets. I left the podcast because it wasn't mine. And I'm an entrepreneur through and through. Like, it was, Bigger Pockets is now owned by private equity, great private equity company, great team, great everything, but it's not mine. Right. And I know a lot of you know exactly what I mean when you say it's still not mine. Whether or not I had some equity, fine, it wasn't mine. So I left. And I started dreaming about the next thing. And I was going to build some huge mastermind. And I was literally shopping for a private jet. There's a woman in that group who charters private jets. So that morning, I'm having a conversation looking at private jets on which one I'm going to buy as soon as I launch this new mastermind that I'm going to launch. And I was going to call it somewhere along the lines of Better Life. And I was going to charge, whatever, hundreds of dollars a month. And I was going to do this thing and I was going to make all this money. And I just knew it would be successful because I'm running so fast and I have 10 years of pent up demand to teach people real estate. I know that I could launch something big. And then Ben Humble, I don't know if you guys know Ben Humble, but Ben's a guy in that group. And he says, hey man, how much are you going to give back to God from this new thing you're going to build? I'm like, oh man, I'm going to give 10% right away. He goes, okay, that's cool, man. What do you want to eventually give back to God? And I was like, well, it'd be super cool someday to give away 50%. He goes, yeah, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Why not now? Why not start that way? And it was like this interesting, challenging question. And first of all, I was like, I hate you, Ben, is my first reaction there. And I'm like, you know what? That's an interesting dynamic. What if I launch this thing and I said, I'm going to give away half? So I said, okay, fine. I'm going to give away half. Then I go to whatever you want to call it, like dinner / the evening event. And Tim Tebow's there, the football player, Christian speaker, fights against human trafficking. And Tim gives, Nicholas, you remember that night? Like, I think everybody was crying in that room. We donated, I don't know, was it almost $2 million, something like that, out of the 50 people there, just to Tim, like, phenomenal night. And during the course of his conversation, I went from 50% ownership of my future company to 0%. I was like, I felt so strongly God saying to me, like, you don't need this. You already have $1 billion, you're gonna make $1 billion off real estate. Like, I'm on a path to be a billionaire through real estate investing. He's like, I got you taken care of. Like, you're fine right now. Give this one to me. And maybe that was my own head. Maybe it was my insecurities. Maybe it was the Holy Spirit. I don't know. But I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. So we launched this new tribe. It's called the Better Life Tribe, and that is phase 4 of my life. Still doing phase 3, still buying real estate, but we've got this new tribe. We got 1,000 people in it, paying $300 a month. That's a lot of money. Once we hit 10,000 people, and we're going to up the price over time, we should be able to give away $50 million a year. And that number might seem ridiculous, but I know two of my close influencer friends in real estate, people that you see them on Instagram. They're just popular real estate educators. They are both making over 60 million a year right now in their education platforms. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it, especially if I'm giving it all away. People love that, right? So now I've got this new mission, which is how do I grow this thing to $1 billion company, making $50 to $100 million a year in profit, and then give that all away. So that's what I'm doing right now is phase 4. And I got other ways of making money. I have like a high end, like a really high ticket, very select real estate thing only for full-time real estate investors. I got that going right now. I'm still, writing books once in a while. Right now, this year, we promised all of the money. Somebody asked where we're giving it to. This year, it's all human trafficking, like anti-human trafficking organizations. This year, we're giving all of it to Tim Tebow. I promised Tim that and his organization that the first year. So we'll give about $1 million this year. We're definitely, we hired 12 people because I know where I'm going. So I hired from where I'm going. So even though we brought in probably 5 million in revenue this year, we'll probably only make a profit of $1 million. But I think with the team we have now, we can scale to 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people without adding many more staff. And man, it feels good. What's crazy is that these things keep happening. When you walk in God's calling for your life, when you walk in when you walk in God's calling, you walk in God's favor, right? When God calls you to do something, you walk there, you walk in God's favor. And when that happens, like the doors that open up have been ridiculous. I mean, when I look back, the number of coincidences over the last year that have happened, I'll give you just like one. Actually, I'll give you 2 really simple ones. I'm sitting at dinner one night, this is 6 months ago, and I say, you know who I would absolutely love to meet someday? And I tell my buddy Ryan, who's running Open Door Capital, I said, the smartest, like entrepreneur, philanthropy guy on the planet that I would love to meet someday is Scott Harrison from Charity Water. I said, Scott Harrison, Charity Water, I would love to meet that guy and pick his brain. And I explained to Ryan who he was. And the next morning, I'm on the phone with John Rulin. Did I see John's name pop up in here? I don't know. I saw John. I'm on the phone with John Rulin and from Giftology. And he's like, yeah, I was hanging out with my buddy Scott the other day. Scott Harrison, Charity Water? And I'm like, shut up. He's like, yeah, I'll connect you right now. And like 10 minutes later, I'm having a conversation the next morning with Scott Harrison. And now he's in my phone. We chat. And like, this is a thing, right? Second story. 2 weeks ago, I say to somebody, I said, this is going to be the line. I got to say this more often. I said, I cannot wait to meet Tim Ballard. The movie's out right now, the Sound of Freedom. Tim Ballard is like the face right now of anti-human trafficking. And I said, I want to meet Tim Ballard sometime. Like, I would love to get that guy in the podcast. And 2 days later, I see my buddy Pace Morby, who's a big real estate educator. Pace is on vacation in Montana. And I'm in Idaho at the time. And I was like, hey, Pace, what's up, man? Are you coming through Idaho? I'd love to, get lunch or something if you drive through. And he said, no, I'm not. But hey, do you want to drive out to Montana? Tim Ballard's coming to speak. You want to meet him? And I'm like, shh. At this point, now this happens daily now. I'm just like, yeah, of course. Of course that would happen right now. Because when you walk in God's calling, you walk in God's favor, and he just opens doors. It's been like that. My whole team, even the non-believers on my team have, this is going to convince them to become a believer. Like we all have this like laugh now. We all just like, yep, God's favor. And we just keep saying it, God's favor. And they all just expect it now. And it's just phenomenal. So anyway, so Tim is actually flying out here. Obviously keep this quiet in case it doesn't happen or they don't want it public, but he's flying out here with his whole family to Maui to come on the Better Life podcast and to do the show with me here in a couple months. So just a cool thing that's happening there. So that's my story. So we still raise money. Open Door Capital we've raised $350 million from investors, just normal people like you who don't want to do the real estate themselves. I still write books and teach people how to do it themselves. There's really so many ways to invest in real estate, and you guys got some Q&A. I'm happy to answer those questions, but that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Bro, so good first off, and hopefully I don't have too much feedback here. We have a ton of questions. We'll try to blast through them. First, I just want to honor you for the guys that maybe jumped in a little bit late. He said he had to evacuate at like 12 in the morning. And just so you know, it's like 12 in the morning there. It's like 7. It's like 7 a.m. there. So like it's super early in, where he's at. He totally could have been like, hey man, I want to do this in my studio with all my stuff set up perfectly, and totally could have not done this. So the fact, it just kind of shows who he is. I love what he said about making a decision is more important than just the decision. Like a meeting with Gary Vaynerchuk in 2016 was literally the only reason I'm doing King's Brotherhood, is because he said the pretty much the same thing. So, dude, thank you so much again. And for these guys, I want to make sure we honor you for that, because it'd be so easy for you to been like, I literally planned a whole nother call because I was like, there's no way this dude's going to jump on this call. And we made it happen. So I'm going to call the people out. And if you can unmute yourself, that'd be awesome. And just to help him out since he's on a phone, Benjamin Boyer, you had the first question around starting over again and also relationship with God stuff. Can you go ahead and ask that?
Brandon, thank you so much. I have to say, your books changed my life. That's how I got into investing. So thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
So 2 questions real quick. If you were to start all over today, where would you begin? And then number 2, how have you stayed tender before the Lord in the midst of your success, reaching to the top of your industry? How have you kept your heart tender before the Lord?
Oh man, such good questions. All right. Let me start with that one. Couple things. One, I surround myself with a few very close Christian brothers, right? Like good friends. And I have literally given them permission to call me out on my crap. If I start buying into my stuff too much. You know, there's this great story in the Bible. You've all heard it. David kills Goliath, right? Then David, becomes king. And then right before the Bathsheba stuff happened, right? There's that line that says, in the spring when kings and armies go to war, David was at his palace while his army was at war, right? So David's sitting at his palace, hanging out, resting on his laurels, chilling, and his army's out at war doing their thing because he's a big deal. David starts believing, I believe he's like believing his crap. He's like, oh, I'm a big deal. I'm the hero here. I'm going to sit down there. And then he gets bored. He starts, gazing over the rooftops. And that's when he sees a naked woman bathing and all that. I recognize, first of all, so recognizing that when kings, it's a weird phrase to use but when people who are successful, start to stay home from war because they've already made it and they send their people out to war in any way, it just breeds corruption. And that's where a lot of problems start to start. So I recognize that. So I tell myself all the time, like, am I at war now, or am I sitting at my palace, checking out the pretty girls? So it's like remembering that having the Christian brothers is huge. And then I'm a big fan of this phrase, you get the results of what you repeatedly do. Right? If you want a 6-pack, just go, there's a very specific set of tasks that get you there. No one's ever surprised by success. That's another way of looking at that. No one ever woke up with a 6-pack or muscles and be like, whoa, how'd those get there? Nobody ever woke up, with a great marriage and was like, weird, how'd that happen? Like, there are steps that they went and just did to get there. So what does that look like in the Christian faith? And then how can I track those? And that sounds like maybe a little bit lame to like, well, I'm tracking my Bible reading. I'm tracking, did I spend time with God? I mean, if it's important, we track things in business. If it's important, track it. So I have an actual habit tracker that I go through every single day. Did I read the Bible? Did I pray? Did I, little things, did I go on a date with my wife? Did I spend time with my kids reading the Bible with them? So that's probably been a big piece of it as well. And I still struggle with it, man. But trying to stay consistent with church. I know there's a lot of people deconstructing and like, oh, the church is bad and they got problems with the church, and churches have problems. But yeah, staying consistent with church is so important. It's like getting tuned up once a week with your car, just make it run better. So that was that's kind of how I try to stay walking with the Lord well. The first question, if I started over, I would look at, okay, first of all, I would like to pick a niche that's weird. What I mean by that is something that not everyone in the world is doing. So I wouldn't just go and buy rental houses today. That's really, really tough. I would say, well, what's coming? Like, Wayne Gretzky has a great quote that says, I'm successful not because I skate to where the puck is, but I skate to where the puck is going. So where's the puck going in American society? Where is the economy going? One way is old people are going to be getting old. Like the baby boomers are going to retire pretty soon, and no one wants to put them in nursing homes because we all have, PTSD from COVID with our parents in nursing homes. So I see this massive need coming for lower to mid-income housing for old people who want to live in community, but don't want to own a big single family house and take up all that crap. So I'd probably pick something like that. And I would just go all in, become world-class at like senior housing or sober living, like drugs and alcohol, big problem, sober living. I'd go into maybe that, or luxury Airbnbs that are just absurdly silly. Why? Because the Instagram age is not getting better. We all want to take pictures of where we're staying and post it on, on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So maybe like a RV park, all with Airstream trailers, something weird like that, that solves where the puck is going. So that's what I'd probably do. And I would just go all in on that. And I'd stay completely focused until I was successful in that, and until I was world-class, then I would add on something else. It was a long answer to a short question.
Awesome, man. Thanks for that one. Next one was Cody, and I'm going to kind of rapid fire these for you guys to go as far as we can. And Brandon, whenever you need to
yeah,
you just let me know, but I'm going to keep just pulling them.
Cool. Well, first of all, Brandon, thank you, man. Thank you for your time, especially after having such a crazy night and home situation. I want to say, when you said you walk in God's calling, you walk in God's favors, doors just open for you, it really resonated. One of the things I'm intentional about this point in my life is I want to get wisdom from men that don't just have fruit in the marketplace, but live out the core values that align. So it's really cool that, Nicholas, that you bring on guys like Brandon that are so high level, but at the same time, like the heart, the fatherhood, the husbandry is all in alignment. So just wanted to honor you, man. Thank you so much. My question had to do with real estate investing. You are the expert in that, of course. 29 years old, entrepreneur, finally at the point where got enough capital, right, that I can start investing in real estate. Here's the thing though, I don't want another full-time business. I'm big on protecting my focus. Like, my lane is my business, right? And that's my highest and best use and best investment, is multiplying my wealth in my earned income through my company. Now, at the same time, I don't want to rely on my earned income for the rest of my life. So I have to take my earned income and I got to start buying assets, and I got to buy assets that start cash flowing, because that's how you become wealthy. So completely understand the strategy. My question to you is, if I was to buy real estate at the end of this year, what would be a good place to start that's not going to be a full-time job?
Dude, that's such a great question. And I love that you asked that, because I have to usually beat that into entrepreneurs, that like your highest and best use is not real estate. I talk more people out of real estate than into real estate, like on calls, because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. Because, like, for those who aren't fully there yet and understanding, any business, right? It looks like this. It's like really slow to start. And then after like 10 years, you start to actually make real money. Almost everybody I know in business took 10 years to make like real money. It takes a long time. So what people do is they're right here on the hockey stick going up. And then they go and try to start back over with real estate, which you start back with, you have to restart the clock then 10 more years of getting to get a real estate before you really make money. It was about 10 years before I really felt like, oh, I'm making money. So first of all, I recognize that's a great question. Couple thoughts. Number one, and this is going to sound self-serving, but it doesn't have to be me. There are lots of people like me who you put your money with them and they go out and find the deals, whether it's a REIT, like a big publicly traded REIT, which I usually don't recommend. They're fine, but they're just lower returns usually, but they're very stable. But there's people like me. That's literally what we do, is we go and raise money, and we're the experts. Like, my team is so good. And then typically the split is we take either 20 or 30% of profit above like an 8% return, 7 or 8%. So once the investors get like a 6, 7, 8%, then we take anything above that, about 20%, sometimes 30, depends on what the deal is. So that's gonna be a really good way if you just want to grow your income. It can be a great way to just get the money moving. So make money in business, and it's literally the most passive thing you can do. You wire the money. Done. I know you usually have to be accredited for that, which is, making $200,000 or $300,000 a year, but most people that can put tons of money like that into a deal, you're probably about there. So that's the first thought. The second thought is, what you could do is you could lean into something like, again, not a great return, but it can be interesting with, like, they call it triple net lease. So imagine buying a warehouse that the warehouse rents to Amazon, because most big, or Home Depot, Lowe's, Starbucks, places that they take a triple net means that they deal with their own repairs, maintenance, overhead, everything. I mean, they even pay triple net. They pay their own, usually, taxes and insurance. There's literally nothing I shouldn't say literally nothing. There's very little that you have to do as an operator. And so what you can do is you can go and find these commercial properties. Now, does that take work? Yes. You still have to learn how to do it. In fact, I have friends who have been burned thinking triple net was just going to be easy. And so they buy a strip mall, and they're like, oh, the tenant pays their own everything. And then they just don't realize that tenants move out, and you have to pay to fix up their unit once they move out. So there are challenges there, but you can buy a $3 million property one time or $5 million, whatever. You put down 20, 25, 30%. And then the management of it is incredibly easy. So that's another way to look into it. The benefit of that one is you can get really good depreciation, which is like the tax write-off. There can be really good stuff there. So yeah, that's probably what to look into, is maybe something like that. Or maybe if you need an office for your own business, you could house hack an office. We're actually about to do that. We're going to build a $20 million co-working center here in Maui, just because I want an office and a studio. And I could go rent one for $5,000 a month, but I'm like, nah, that's not fun. I don't want to pay for it. So I'm going to go and build an office building where I can rent it out to other people. I'll have a free office at that point, and I'll have a $20 million investment that I just get to own. So that's another avenue that doesn't take as much work, but can be good. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Awesome, man. Thanks for that question. Josh, I know you sent me your question beforehand, so I'm going to add you in a pin and go ahead and ask your question.
Me, Josh?
He's racing for that mute. Oh, sorry.
Or the other one.
Josh with a
Who's
Z.
Josh?
Sorry.
My bad, Josh. But if you want to go ahead, brother, you can go ahead, because man, I have so much questions. Yeah.
Bro, knock it out. Josh with a Z. You literally sent me your question like 5 days before the call.
Yeah,
So this,
so
I think
I
you're
guess
in
before-
queue.
Yeah. So before I go into that question, I have other question. But first, Brandon, I want to, like what Cody said, I want to honor you. Like, man, you really accelerated my growth. Met you last year here in San Diego with, of course, David Green. The conference with Bigger Pockets. So guess let's get to it, because I know your time is valuable. First question, I have a bunch. I'll try my best, because I have so much things going on in my head. I want to ask you a bunch of questions. So vision and strategy. I just wanted to, like, kind of in your experience, what distinguishes a multifamily property as a great opportunity in the current market we have?
yeah, I'll give you a very short answer to that one. The reason I like multifamily right now is because the government printed like $1 bazillion, and they didn't build enough rentals for a long time. So we have a housing crisis in America that there's almost no expert thinks it's getting better. And so what that means is, when I look at where the puck is going, I see rents continuing to rise. So when you can buy multifamily, which is scalable residential property at a large amount, rents that are $1,000 today, I believe will be 12, 13, 14, 15, 2,000 in the next few years. So we can buy property for 100 million and then sell it for 200 million 10 years from now. And in the meantime, you can at least cash flow a little bit. That sounds like a win-win to me. So that's why I like it.
Sounds good. And a follow-up question in terms of market analysis. What markets or regions do you currently see as undervalued or prime from growth in the multifamily sector?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think you can make money in any market, right? So I'll start with that. Every single market in America, you could make money with it. That's it. I have some criteria that I aim for when it comes to where I buy. And that's specifically, I want population to be large enough to have, like, I don't want to buy in the middle of nowhere, a town of 5,000 people. I need a scalable property that I can actually find tenants at. I want a growing population that's growing, and the price to rent the price has to work. I have to actually make money. So we like a lot of the Southeast. So Florida, I'm a big fan of. I'm a fan of, so we got Florida. I like Georgia, the Carolinas, Alabama. We just bought a self-storage unit in Alabama. We buy a lot of apartments in Texas. We just bought something in Nevada. We bought something in Arizona. So I like red states, not blue states. That's not a political thing as much as it is states like California, Oregon, Washington, Michigan. They're just on a path toward giving tenants free rent and screwing over landlords as much as possible. And so I would prefer not to be in a place that has that kind of control over my destiny. So that's what I look for.
Talking about red state and blue state, because I think this is the question I'm trying to see how I could ask.
Yeah.
So we bought a property in Oregon, like a 20 units multifamily. So when we raised, it was I follow you. I know you don't like California and Oregon. The reason I did it is because we're so niche, and I know not a lot of competition, and we know what we're doing. So we thought we can definitely, because the property is undervalued, and we can definitely, like, raise the rent and we can definitely like do a lot of value add, which we did. So, but we're still struggling because it's a blue state. But the current like law, it's actually, it favored us. So we were able to like rate, like since we got it like last October, I think a little bit before I met you, I think we closed on that deal. We since now I think we're about to reach like the income about 27, almost 28 increase on the income we have. But it's still because it's in a blue state, so our returns are like 18, 19 AAR. But people, it's a blue state. They're like, well, I'd rather go to your Texas with 10 to 12% because it's Texas. So I'm trying to figure out like it's hard for someone like I guess newer to like don't have open door capital yet, right? So like to raise and educate them, you know, like, hey, like we have a better returns compared to like our deals that we had in Texas. So like how can I like, I don't know, how can I get investors to actually understand, even though it's like, yeah, I know it's a blue state, but we already, and it's not even hypothetical anymore because it's already performing.
Yep.
So how can we like say, hey, this is actually working? And we are, you know, we underwrote what would happen. We're so conservative in what we did. So it's actually working.
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, I make fun of California and Oregon and all that, but I actually love that you did that. And here, this is a lesson for everybody in real estate. And y'all know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is like money is made in hard, right? In hard things. So like pick your hard and then go all in on that hard thing. Like when we bought mobile home parks are incredibly difficult. And then we bought the infill. We buy ones that we have to fill up. We buy ones that are half empty. It's incredibly difficult to fill up a mobile home park, to find homes, move them in, everything. It's terrible. We choose that hard because that's where the money is made. In any business, money's made in hard. So I don't actually tell people not to invest in Oregon. Just understand that is very, very hard. Great. That's your hard. Like you chose it. Great. Okay. So how can you become world-class at that hard thing? There are many people making a killing in Oregon and California and Washington just fine. It's just not my hard. I don't want that hard. You can have that hard. So that said, it's all what I'm good at. One of the things I'm good at is just marketing and spinning things, right? So if I were in your shoes, I'd look at trying to raise in Oregon and I would find a way to make me the bad guy, not really, but like, companies like mine, be like, oh yeah, you can, here's the 3 things that most people do is they go and buy in Texas, but do you realize that property taxes are blah, blah, blah there? You find the reasons why my deals are not as good. And you're like, yes, we're a blue state and that's why we love it. In fact, I would even say that. In fact, I'd find data. I'm sure you could find data to back this up. That blue states appreciate faster than red states. Blue states actually, because of blah blah blah, go up higher. Rent control actually helps investors, and here's why. And so, if you can find a way to spin it and then show why, it's not like, oh, I know it's Oregon. I'm sorry, guys, but blah 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 blah. Instead, it's like, gosh darn right, it's Oregon. This is the best state in the country to invest in, and here's why. And you're confident. Everyone just wants to be like, they want to feel that. So let them feel that. Like figure out the angle, and then lean into the hard. And people are like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, good. And then they'll be more likely to invest.
Awesome. Last question. I had others, but I want to honor other people's time for financing. How do you approach financing? As if like, let's say when you were starting, because I know you have open door capital now, how do you approach financing for multi-family properties, especially when you're scaling up? Can you like share creative financing strategies that have worked for you before open door capital?
Yeah. Our first mobile home park, I did seller financing, which is also what I did on that apartment complex, right? So the seller carries the contract, and that's a super interesting strategy, because especially maybe not in like the $100 million properties, because those are all owned by hedge funds and companies like mine, but like think of a 20 unit, 40 unit, 50 unit apartment. It's owned by some mom and pop that probably go to church somewhere, and they're living off the retirement. And most of those people are getting old. They don't want to manage their property anymore, but they don't want to lose the cash flow they've been getting for 20 years. And they kind of have an emotional attachment to the property still. So I love the idea of seller financing, or subject to, as somebody pointed out. Pace Morby's amazing at the subject to game, which is basically like seller financing, just you leave the mortgage in place. And that's a whole different conversation, but I like that strategy a lot. We also work a lot in the beginning with small local community banks. So we wouldn't go to Chase Bank or Wells Fargo or something like that, Bank of America. We would go to like, Willamette Valley Bank or whatever, like some small local bank that has like 5 branches. Because those people are way more flexible and easy to work with, and they want to invest in their local community. And they want to see their community thrive, and they want to go drive to the property. And so I would lean heavily into that. And then don't be afraid to JV. Like I said earlier, like if you bring in another team, let's say you're really good at finding deals and you find somebody else who's amazing at raising capital, just join forces. Who cares if you give away half your profits, but you can do twice as many deals? At least then you don't have to do the thing you're not good at, and they don't have to do the thing they're not good at, and everybody wins.
Sounds good. So since for the JV, and we are so focused in Oregon, are you like okay to like JV in Oregon?
No chance. Oh man, Oregon is just I'm glad you're in it, because it's a hard thing right now. But yeah, we have very strict rules, and we're really good about like what we won't do. We have guardrails, and like California, Oregon, Michigan, and Washington won't touch it.
Thank you,
Awesome,
Brandon.
man. Thanks, Josh,
Appreciate
for
you,
the
man.
questions. That's awesome.
Man.
Errol, go ahead, shoot it, man.
Awesome. I'm gonna change the tune of the room away from real estate for just 1 second. I was a huge fan of Bigger Pockets. Once you left, I just stopped listening. No, I'm just kidding. Still love the guys that are over there. They're awesome. But right now, I'm about to launch this podcast, and I think it's really awesome that you have essentially moved into your own podcast, your own content stream that you fully own. So I was wondering, how are you looking at your content at this point in your, content journey versus, how you're looking at it with Bigger Pockets? So just to give an example, Bigger Pockets, all about real estate. You're really doubled down on it. I see you doing a lot more different types of things, I think, or at least that's my perception of it in your new content. So how are you looking at kind of like your niche coming into this new podcast and this new content stream? And I say this to somebody who's like, just starting out with our content. My sister is an influencer, and the way that she has kind of built her brand is she has her niche, but she also like expands outside of her niche because that keeps it like really comfortable for her, keeps it interesting. And she believes it actually just makes the content all around better. So I'm trying to balance out these things like the traditional thoughts around niche, while also like wanting to have conversations like with people who I'm just really interested in talking to. So I was wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And this is something I struggled with a lot when I was going to launch the podcast. Do I make it another real estate podcast or not? I would actually argue that what I did was not the smart move. At least it was a longer shot. It was a bigger risk. And what I mean by that is, if I would have launched a new real estate podcast and it was the Better Life Real Estate Podcast, and it started with a quick tip and a famous four and a fire round, guaranteed that thing would have been way bigger than my current one is, right? It's so much easier to sell. When I say sell, it's like get people interested in something that's directly going to make them money than it is to something that's going to improve their life in general via conversation. But the question, but there is a ceiling on how big I could grow with real estate investing. And, it's a huge ceiling, but I made the choice to try to go up a level into the more personal development space as a way to, take that shot. Like I'm swinging for the fence here. Can I be Joe Rogan? Can I be, one of the big shows out there, Patrick Bet-David, whatever, who's just a little bit more broad. So I'm choosing on that one right now. We're actually going to launch a real estate podcast in a few months, though, that I'm going to go beyond, and it's going to be just like Bigger Pockets. And so I'm still going to play that game too, but that's not the primary thing. So I wanted to play bigger. That said, I am going to steer back on my Instagram heavier into real estate investing, much heavier, because that is what people want. They want to know how to get rich through real estate. And that's what I'm known for. And if the goal is I don't really care how I get there, but I want to give away $50 to $100 million a year to fight human trafficking. If that means I go back into real estate, great. I'm going to go back into real estate. So yeah, when it comes to podcasts though, podcasting today, honestly, is all about the clips for social media. It's not even about the podcast anymore, right? So we invest heavy into the video. In fact, I mentioned earlier about doing the hard things, right? When I thought about podcasts, how am I going to stand out? Well, I asked myself, well, what's hard? I said, traveling around the country, even though I got 2 little kids at home, traveling around to do a podcast in person with multiple camera angles, high def, and amazing people, that's incredibly hard. Then I'm like, that's what I'm going to do, because it's all about the clips. So I'm really investing into that. And I found ways to make it easier. We only travel 4 times a year. I bring my family with. We do 6, 7, 8, 9 episodes in 1 week. We just knock them out. And you figure out how to make the hard work, and then it becomes not so hard. So anyway, that's a lot of general stuff, but yeah, I'm just it's way easier to niche down. So I would actually almost always say start niched as you could possibly be. This is an Alex Hormozy thing, right? He talks a lot about this. Is like, if I was like, hey, I'm a business consultant, you're like, okay, good for you. And I'm like, I'll charge you $100 an hour. And you're like, no. But if I was like, hey, I'm a business consultant who helps people with beards launch podcasts that grow, you'd be like, oh, I'll pay $1,000, right? The specificity makes me way more interesting, and people way more interested. And then you can charge way more money for whatever your solution is. So I like niching down, but I did that for a decade, and now I'm not niching as much. So
I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's probably the route that we'll go to. And maybe for my own mental health, like 80-20. So maybe just do 20% test on some other content that might make us a little bit more niche. So
yeah, and that's what we did at Bigger Pockets. I mean, we started with just real estate, but over the years, I started adding on the Sunday episodes, and Sunday ended up being not real estate. It was authors and speakers, and I loved those episodes. I did that for me, not necessarily for everyone else, because I wanted to broaden, and people loved it. The Sunday episodes were just as popular as the regular, and I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have tested it and tried it. So definitely, yeah, play with both and see what people respond to.
thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
Rob, this may be the last one. I'll check in with Brandon after this. I think I'm helping him get his 10,000 steps right now. Okay. So I'm thinking, we still need a little bit more steps.
Yeah, let's do a couple more. I'm nearing the house that I'm staying at, my evacuation.
Right on. Hey, Brandon, again, God bless you, brother. Thank you for your time today. You've been super generous with your time. I started in investing before becoming a real estate agent. Your books have been essential to our growth in investing, and the fact that you're so generous with your time today and pouring into us. Just thank you. In the midst of everything you're going through. Thank you, man. So my question, not quite related to real estate investing, just more scaling in general through affiliates. So you're, of course, you're just super inspiring, your growth that you have. And as you started investing, and you've got books and a podcast and all sorts of amazing products. I have a similar track on being a real estate agent, top producing team leader, and now coach. And I've created an incredible on-demand coaching course for real estate agents. So I've entered a very saturated industry, but for sure the course, it's just a detailed framework, unlike anything that's ever been created. And rather than trying to knock down dominoes, I'm looking to create affiliate partnerships, joint ventures to leverage other people. I have no problem coming them in on the profit. I've just had a lot more roadblocks than expected. And so I'm wondering, especially since we're in kind of aligned industries almost, do you have any experience in forming, affiliate agreements or joint ventures for products, not necessarily investing deals? Or maybe you could draw some similarities here, but recommendations that could allow me to form better affiliate agreements to help reach more people faster.
Yeah, man. I'll start by saying I'm not super good at this. We did very little of it Bigger Pockets. We've done very little of it with the current stuff. We are hoping to do the same. We're hoping to launch bigger affiliate stuff. I do think there's a lot of potential there. But yeah, I think the heyday of my guess is the glory days of affiliate marketing is largely over because of how easy it is for people to just create their own stuff these days. Even if it's not as good as yours, they're not going to believe that. Like everyone assumes that theirs is going to be better. So it's like every influencer out there, especially in like real estate, if they're good enough to have an audience, they're probably just making their own course, and they're like, well, why would I affiliate? Right? I don't know if that's the struggle you found, but we found that a bit is everyone I'd want to affiliate is already doing their own thing. So what I'd look for, and what I want to look for, is kind of tangential groups. So maybe somebody who's not in real estate, specifically, like maybe they're in, honestly, real estate agents, right? I can go to a real estate agent coach, somebody with a big audience and real estate agents, and say, hey, I'm making a course on, or hey, our real estate course is going to be whatever for real estate agents who want to invest in real estate. So it's very specific. Even if I had to alter what I'm selling slightly and market it differently, but I'd be very much more specific to a much smaller group. Or even like, I make this course for Christian real estate agents on how to scale their investing while staying close to God. Like I might even consider like, okay, I just got to add a couple more modules onto my thing and then just repackage it for that person. So I think that's interesting. I think there's also an interesting, like in the world of affiliate, which is what I have not done into, which is like the competition. You get affiliates competing on some scoreboard and some like, who's going to be the biggest affiliate for this launch. I think that stuff is fascinating. We get people's egos at play, but that's about all I can say because I just haven't done much of it. It's just harder. Yeah, it's harder for me than I expected it to be as well.
Yeah, thank you. The biggest problem I've run into is they're more egotistical than I expected. Like I've shown my course to like the biggest player at EXP, the biggest player at Keller Williams, and they're all like, this is better than anything we have, but we don't want them to see anyone else's faces but ours.
Yes, exactly.
So.
That's exactly what we find as well. Yeah, they don't. Yeah. That's why. Yeah, maybe there's an avenue in the influencer world where you go to people like who have 1 million followers, but they're just Instagram famous. That's about it. They don't have courses. They're not training, and maybe they're in some other completely different niche, not like beauty, but like, just like a wealth person or whatever. I don't know. Again, that's industry. Wealth and money is just so saturated. But if you can find a way to get, where would, okay, I'm thinking like a dad group, right? So a group of dads. Like, is there an influencer? Is there an Instagram account out there that has 1 million followers that's all about being a better dad? I'm sure there is. Would being a better dad, are there real estate agents and they're guaranteed? Are there people who want financial freedom and could get it through being a real estate agent? Guaranteed. So finding that person, they're going to be a lot less egotistical. My guess is, they're not going to want to. They don't want to teach on real estate anyway. So maybe that could work.
No, right on. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. God bless you, man.
We just got to get him in a green T-shirt so when he films the whole course, he could green screen the company's name on the. I'll put your company's logo. I will be your ambassador.
That's a good idea.
Right. I just had to throw that in there. I think it was Joshua. I think you had the last one. I'm not sure. Like, there's a lot of comments, which is awesome, and the retention for going way over has been pretty insane as well. So, Brandon, that's really cool. If you, Joshua Johnson, go ahead and unmute yourself. I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. It's been a ton of fun to listen to. My question was there, like, I'm not a real estate investor. I don't have any real estate right now, and so I'm just soaking up as much as I can as a sponge. But thinking your response to, I forget which guy asked it, but it answered some of the questions. So I wanted to push a little bit further, where you basically said real estate might not be a great idea now. And you talked about this long journey growing your business till it makes money. Like, why would you start back again at zero? And so for somebody in my shoes, like, I would like to have a home someday sooner than later. Business is going well. Like, I'm thinking ahead, getting to that point. Like, what would be like the one move you would make for somebody who's in my shoes, not interested in becoming a real estate investor full time, but do want to have something in that space, and thinking about that now so I can work towards it as the future is coming down.
Yeah, I love that. Here's a couple of thoughts. What I would do if I were in your shoes, I'm not saying you should do this, but just what I would do. When I started out in real estate, I always wanted to buy the cheapest houses possible. I kind of regret that choice. What I wish I would have done is found the most expensive house possible and then found a way to make it work for me. Should I lose my job? What I mean by that is going back to the house hacking concept. Imagine this. Imagine you could buy a $200,000 house. I don't know what area you're in, but let's just say you could buy a $200,000 house, or you could buy $1 million house. I would buy the $1 million house.
Montana. They're expensive.
Oh, okay. You can buy a $3,000 house. I'm just kidding. No. So you can. I know. It's Montana's.
No, 3 million where I live. 3,000. What?
Montana's surprisingly expensive. I remember that, like, because I'm at Northern Idaho, Coeur d'Alene. It's like I just paid $3 million for a house. It's crazy. But anyway, so if you could buy a more expensive house, but have one that does make you not necessarily money, but at least it has like an extra unit, like a mother-in-law apartment or whatever. Worst case, and then you run the numbers, and if you can get close or get to break even, should something go wrong, your business goes to zero, you got to rent out both units separately, you can at least pay the mortgage, great, because that $1 million, $2 million property, whatever that is, if you can hold it, 30 years from now is worth 8, and you're going to owe nothing on it. Right? Like, one property will set you up for financial freedom for the rest of your life if you do it right. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to make a ton of cash flow, of course, not at all. But if I could get the And again, I don't think you should go and max out your living if you know, oh, I want a $10,000 mortgage and then you're like strapped, right? That's not fun either, which is why, again, house hacking, if you can take a $10,000 mortgage, but rent out the other unit for three or 4 or 5 grand. Well, now all of a sudden, yeah. So it's like one property, millions and millions of dollars. In fact, this is a technique I tell people all the time about their kids. If you guys have young kids at home, buy one rental house, just a cheap rental house anywhere in the country, doesn't matter where, and just put it on a 15-year mortgage. You don't need to make money on it. You don't need to make profit. You could even lose money. I don't think that's a good idea, but you could even lose money. Just get one rental house when your kids are young. 15 years later, when your kid's ready to go off to college, you now have a rental house that is paid off. You owe nothing on it. Let's say you buy it for $200,000. Well, now it's worth $400,000. You owe nothing on it. You can then refinance it or sell it, and it pays for your kid's entire college education, and you didn't have to do a thing. You just, when you bought it, you can take your down payment back from your kid, right? So I did that for my daughter, Rosie and Wilder. I bought Rosie a property, and then I invested $50,000 into one of my real estate funds for my son, Wilder. So I said, yeah, Rosie gets the house, Wilder got the passive investment. And you know, it's cool because it's going to pay for their college, but the bigger thing is it's going to teach them the power of real estate. And like Rosie will doing her, like both of them will be doing their own math with that property. They're going to be understanding how it works, why it works. So anyway, the same thing applies to you. If you buy any property, hold on to it long enough, it's going to make you fabulously wealthy. It's like an insurance policy. If everything else in your life goes wrong, as long as you can hold on to your real estate, it's almost impossible to lose, especially if you're in a good area. So
Awesome. Thanks, man. That's really helpful.
So good, man. Brandon, thank you so much again. And let me just throw remove pin so we both can be up here. The two things that I think is super valuable for the guys. One, when I didn't grow up with my family making a ton of money and making great investments. So most of the time, all I did was just try to stack money in my bank account, hold on to it, because I looked at everything as the same risk as Bitcoin. I was like, might as well just throw it into the most highest risk because it's all the same risk. And this stuff has transformed my family's life forever on the investing side, but also on the other side, it like forever. But also on the other side of how you've actually built the influence along with it, how you're going about everything. I have so many notes and so many takeaways on how you actually built everything that's so relevant to what I'm doing. So I appreciate you sharing on both sides. And for everyone out there, even for Joshua, that could be, it's like so attainable, right? It's like, oh, I could do that. I could get that place with renting out these things and it'd be exactly what I pay now or less. And I can do that. Like, I know I can do that. I have direction. I know exactly where to go. And when you have that direction, the path to get there is so good or so easy. And same with Brandon. I love what he said about, I want to give away $60 to $100 million a year. So if that means go back deeper into real estate, my goal is not what even industry I'm in. My goal is actually that as long as I'm doing good things, like moral and ethical, and to be able to give away the money. And it made the decision so much easier. So many phenomenal takeaways. So man, thank you so much for doing 10,000 steps with us, stacking both things, and being here with us. I mean, it means a ton.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I got how many am I at? Only 4,400? That can't be right. Maybe because I'm holding the phone, it's not tracking right. We're gonna go with that.
it might be though. 5 miles takes quite a while to walk, and but also would love to have the guys come in agreement while we're here. Is there anything specific that our guys can pray for you for outside of obviously the fact that you're evacuated?
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I would pray for Maui in general. And then on a personal level, man, I messed up something rough in my back the other day that probably is going to need surgery. I don't know what I was doing jujitsu and I just massacred the upper back. So from a physical standpoint, it'd be nice not to get surgery.
Absolutely, man. You're cool with it getting healed as well.
That'd be wonderful.
Awesome, man. So even as you're walking right now, you can give it a shot to try to touch wherever that is on your back, and we'll pray for both. Jesus, I just thank you right now for bringing this man to us. You said where 2 or more gathered, you were there in the midst. You also say that your promises are yes and amen. So we just call upon that your body was broken so that his body may be healed. I call on a brand new renewing inside of his back, and I command all pain to leave. Even right now, as he moves around, that it would just decrease from whatever the pain's at to 50% to 20% to 10% and be completely restored without any type of surgery. That we believe that your sacrifice of your body was good enough to bring about the healing, just as you promised. I pray for the entire island that he's on, that you not only keep his family protected, but there would be something positive that comes out of this, that whatever fires are there, that they would go down, that whatever storm, whatever things are pushing the fires around, that there would be a supernatural calming, just as you calmed the sea. And you looked at us and you said, why do we have such little faith? You slept through the storm because you were so confident in the authority that you had, and you died to give us that authority. So we just command and take authority over that, calm the winds, decrease the fire, put out the fires, restore that island, and restore this back, and everything that his hand touches again, that you'd make it prosper, and bless him for coming and giving more blessed to the hand that gives than receives. And he's coming and given so much to us. We've been blessed, but I just pray that there would be that 30, 60, and 100-fold blessing on the fact that he brought the word here today and poured into these guys, and that he would see it and give you glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, dude.
You guys
Keep us updated on the back, because I want to share that
will.
testimony. You know what
I
I'm
will, man.
saying? I love it,
Yeah.
dude. Well, appreciate you so much, and thank you guys for crushing it on Wednesday's Power Hour. Next week, we are going to be getting together again with Nick, worshiping, as well as masterminding. Let's run throughout this week, and I'll see you guys the week after, since I will be no service, no internet, no phone, in the middle of nowhere with the family. Appreciate you guys. Thanks again, Brandon.
Thank you, guys.